Music. Picture a young child, barely 7 years old, tucked away in the corner of a sunlit living room. The drapes are pulled back fully, sunlight pouring through. Yet, their tiny frame seems burdened by invisible darkness. Nearby, grown-ups buzz with enthusiasm, smartphones in hand, videos capturing every moment. A voice urges, "Go ahead, perform that tune once more." The crowd adored it. The kid pauses briefly. They'd rather be outdoors, dashing around shoeless, giggling without restraint. But they inhale deeply, suppress the longing, and start to sing. The melody flows sweetly, untouched, genuine. Deep down, though, a subtle realization stirs. People notice me only when I'm on display. They value me for the show I put on. Once the act ends, I'm forgotten. Such is the mindset of the child performer, not the kind splashed across gossip magazines, but a kid raised to equate their value with how effectively they deliver, satisfy, or dazzle an audience. Music. Plenty of us, well into adulthood, still harbor pieces of that inner child. The one shaped by the necessity of visibility, not for their true self, but for the image others preferred. This isn't mere figurative language. It stems from established insights in psychology, child growth, and our innate drive for connection. In settings where affection seems tied to conditions, where praise peaks during moments of standout effort, amusement, or achievement, the brain adapts to prioritize display. Validation turns into a lifeline. Stillness equates to strangling pressure. Each cheer, ovation, or nod of approval gets absorbed like a vital gulp in arid wastes. But what occurs when the audience falls silent? That's the point where the fragility surfaces. Research in child psychology reveals how kids absorb deeply the actions that draw focus. If warmth and acknowledgement arrive chiefly through accomplishments, through melodies, movements, top marks, or embodying the ideal child, then excelling morphs into a core tactic for endurance. They reason. Without constant excellence, affection vanishes. This conviction lingers beyond youth, trailing into teen years, mature life, professions, and bonds. They might evolve into top scholars, relentless go-getters, the life of gatherings, or the constant accommodator in connections. Still, under the cheers, a subtle pang often persists, a feeling of never being truly recognized without the facade. Consider it like this. A tree doesn't compel itself to flower nonstop. It cycles through expansion, dormancy, release, and quiet phases. Yet, the performer child develops in a world that forbids downtime. They must embody perpetual renewal, constant flowering, unending glow, perpetual productivity. And whenever they seek pause, whenever they reveal sorrow, frustration, or bewilderment, they face letdown. Gentle remarks such as, "Cheer up, don't sulk," or, "Hey, you're our ray of joy," coax us back to grins. These offhand words might appear innocent, but for a young mind, they hold tremendous sway. They murmur, "Conceal your darkness, reveal just your radiance. Your worth resides in your contributions, not your essence." Thus, an internal divide emerges, the showcased self and the concealed one. The showcased self gleams with polish, allure, triumph, and infinite flexibility. The concealed self bears the weariness, grief, the anxieties that lacked a secure haven. In psychological terms, Carl Jung described the persona as the social facade we don. For the performer child, this persona shifts from mere covering to confinement. It shields, yet it also traps. But here's the deeper layer. As these kids mature into grown-ups, numerous thrive remarkably. They master reading emotions, foreseeing demands, adjusting to diverse scenarios. They're frequently the quick climbers in jobs, the room enchanters, the guides, creators, or trendsetters. While society praises their talent, inside a void might echo because display has ingrained itself, while genuineness feels foreign. Of course, this doesn't label skill or drive as a flaw. The issue lies not in the glow itself. It's the conviction that value depends solely on that glow. Envision a lifetime anchored in the fear that pausing the sparkle, even briefly, would drive others away. That's the unseen load of the performer child. A key idea in psychology, known as conditional regard, illuminates this. Studies indicate that when kids sense affection only upon fulfilling specific criteria, be it good conduct, triumphs, or amusing others, they embed the notion that love requires earning, never offered unconditionally. In later years, this surfaces as relentless perfectionism, ongoing worry, or even the fraud complex, since at core, they dread that any stumble means not just fading cheers, but forfeited affection. And truthfully, doesn't this resonate with so many of us, regardless of our upbringing's intensity? How frequently have we sensed that pull to keep up the act? Have you ever considered how our worth gets linked to our accomplishments instead of our essence? That if we quit striving in our careers, personal bonds, or social groups, we'd just slip away unnoticed. That's precisely why the tale of the star child strikes such a deep chord. In essence, we've all been conditioned to put on a show, to grin through our weariness, to seem strong amid fatigue, to display triumph even as we wrestle with inner turmoil. Yet here's the subtle heartbreak. When acting becomes who we are, our inner spirit finds no respite. The kid within yearns to feel cherished, not for the melody they produce, but for the hush they hold, not for the glow they emit, but for the darkness they bear. Picture a young one who, after endless years of showing off, finally musters the courage to admit, quote, "Yif." The response that follows outweighs any crowd's cheers. If greeted with empathy, if a voice reassures, "That's fine, you're loved regardless," recovery starts to take root. But if faced with letdown or rejection, the conviction solidifies. I have to keep going. I can't ever halt. Thus, the mindset of the star child forms a riddle. Outwardly, they dazzle. Inwardly, they battle. They deliver delight to those around them, yet seldom savor it for themselves. They're praised for resilience, but they yearn for permission to falter. This sparks a profound inquiry. What does real recognition entail? Is it acclaim for our contributions or embrace for our core being? If every tree endures its winter, why withhold that from kids? If every heaven faces tempests, why force certain children to embody only radiance? The more we probe this, the more evident it grows that it's not merely personal psyche at play. It's woven into our societal fabric. Countless cultures exalt effort, success, and mastery. From early on, young ones earn praise for scores, awards, honors, skills. Seldom do they get commended for mere existence, for candor, fragility, or serene being. We train them to vie, but not to unwind. We urge them to captivate, but not to linger in their quiet depths. Consequently, as that youth matures into maturity, they might hold dual realities: the skill to shine spectacularly and the profound desire to be valued once the lights dim. This lies at the core of the star child narrative. The youth compelled to entertain and the grown-up still seeking a space free from the need to perform. Yet the narrative extends beyond childhood, for every kid evolves into an adult, and the habits ingrained in our formative days frequently resound more fiercely in later life than we acknowledge. The star child once prompted to sing on cue might evolve into the worker who refuses to decline requests, the companion who constantly amuses, or the confidant who conceals their suffering to sustain the collective mirth. Gradually, fragment by fragment, they start to ponder, what remains of me without the act? Do I even matter absent the ovation? This query might appear theatrical, but for countless, it rings profoundly true. In the realm of mental health, it ties to the notion of the false self, as outlined by psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. This false self emerges as a shield, a persona tailored to fulfill others' demands. It ensures security, it secures belonging, yet exacts a toll. The authentic self withdraws further into obscurity. For the star child, this false self transcends a mere facade for rare moments. It engulfs their whole sense of self. And this is where complexity mounts. Society favors the false self. The broader world adores those who energize spaces, who beam with warmth, who invariably proffer something noteworthy. Advancements, bonds, esteem, these tend to flow more readily to performers. But within, the burden intensifies. For regardless of piled-up triumphs, regardless of throngs' hurrahs, the concealed self murmurs, "Would affection endure if I ceased?" That's why numerous top performers, upon finally halting, describe a vast void. They've devoted ages to saturating the atmosphere with tunes, chuckles, feats, and genius that quietude seems intolerable. They dread quiet not for its vacancy, but because it risks exposing their profound lack of true sight. Consider a taper. It can flicker splendidly, illuminating surroundings, but if denied pause, it ultimately consumes itself. The star child matures, convinced they must blaze without end, that the instant they wane, oblivion awaits. Yet existence devoid of renewal, devoid of genuineness, ultimately drains the spirit. Studies on what drives us, especially psychologist Edward Desai's insights into self-determination theory, reveal that people flourish when three essentials align: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. The star child frequently masters competence. They surpass, they execute, they attain. But autonomy, the liberty to decide, and relatedness, the sense of being valued for one's true nature, those needs often go unfulfilled. And without fulfillment, even the greatest triumphs can ring empty. Now, consider this painful loop. Plenty of former child prodigies, as adults, unwittingly repeat the pattern with their own kids. They urge them to excel, to captivate, to rise above the rest, believing it's a boon. Sure, motivation has its place, but the underlying signal can echo the past. I value you more when you're outstanding. I notice you more when you're on display. Thus, the chain of love tied to conditions persists subtly. Yet, the uplifting truth is that such loops can shatter. It starts with recognition. Taking a beat to reflect. Am I existing as an act or as my true self? When exhaustion hits, do I still plaster on a grin? When I feel invisible, do I chase accomplishments instead of opening up? Can I grasp what it's like to be cherished in my subdued times? These inquiries are tough, no doubt, but they're vital. Next comes bravery. The guts to drop the facade, if only briefly, and experiment. Will others stick around when I'm not captivating? Will ears perk up when I'm not amusing? It's through these modest bursts of authenticity, like confiding in a pal, "I'm struggling right now," or declining when you're drained, that the inner performer starts mending. On a deeper level, this touches one of existence's profoundest riddles. We pour energy into being exceptional, yet what we yearn for is affection in our everydayness, acceptance when we offer nothing but our raw selves. The gifted child masters the art of sparkling like a celestial body. But recovery arrives when they realize they're permitted to embody the cosmos too, expansive, serene, motionless, and deserving of awe. Ponder that. Celestial lights gleam against the void. Absent the gloom, their glow would vanish. Likewise, our essence shines not solely in peaks of brilliance, but in our dimmer aspects too. To reject the dim side is to reject life's full spectrum. That's why exploring the mindset of the gifted child goes beyond early years. It's a reflection for everyone. After all, we've all been conditioned to put on a show. We've all sensed the squeeze to charm, to thrive, to wow. But genuine liberation isn't in non-stop dazzling. It's in settling into the certainty of being cherished precisely when we dim. I recall a tale of a performer who'd toured relentlessly for years before crumbling under fatigue. When probed on why they'd driven so hard, the reply was straightforward. I dreaded that pausing would erase me from memory. That dread, voiced by a creative soul, echoes in countless hearts. We worry that halting the act, be it on the job, in bonds, or in digital spaces, will make us fade away. Yet reality whispers otherwise. We're embraced not for our radiance, but for our very being. And being human isn't a spectacle. It's simply showing up. For the gifted child, recovery frequently sparks through understated peaceful gestures. Declining requests, unwinding sans remorse. Voicing an unvarnished reality. Embracing affection amid flaws. These aren't simple shifts. As the ingrained habit murmurs, "Keep up the show or they'll drift." But gradually, surrounded by the right company, the performer uncovers that authentic ties endure beyond the glare. True bonds linger amid the hush. And this is where insight blends with wisdom. Brain science reveals we're built for bonds. Oxytocin, the feel-good connector, surges not just amid thrills or ovations, but in serene closeness, in raw openness, in mutual calm. So the affection we seek at our core isn't from roaring fans. It's from the soft gaze of one who beholds our unadorned self. If you've ever been that kid dancing in the den for a glance, hear this. You're far from isolated. Innumerable souls shoulder this load, yet you're not fated to bear it eternally. You can exit the limelight, even momentarily, and find that those who count will stand firm. And if you care for someone lugging this load, recall, the finest offering isn't cheers, acclaim, or awe. It's simply being there, meeting their eyes in quiet spells, in weariness, in offstage lulls, and affirming, I notice you, you're sufficient. Ultimately, the inner world of the gifted child isn't confined to youth. It speaks to us all. It's the shared ache for unconditional regard, to be prized not for our melodies, but for our pauses, not for our beams, but for our mortal core. And perhaps the truest act of all isn't bedazzling others, it's summoning the nerve to be genuine.